Hello and welcome to Fiction Fans, a podcast where we read books and other porn too. I'm Lily.
And I'm Sarah. And I am so pleased that we have our occasional third co-host, Krystle Matar, author of Legacy of the Brightwash, with us today to talk about Kushiel's Dart.
Hello, everyone.
And porn.
Boy, oh boy, is there a lot of porn. Yeah, it seems to be what I'm on most often to talk about.
That's because that's the fun stuff.
Being typecast.
This is all Sarah's fault. We're going to blame the entire episode on her.
Actually, it's Thomas Howard Riley's fault because we were talking about Kushiel's Dart. Somehow it came up in a Twitter thread or whatever.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And Krystle said that she hadn't read it. And Thomas was like, you have to read it. And I said, we should read it for an episode.
And I said, sure.
So it's only partially my fault.
Yeah.
In my defense, I probably wouldn't have suggested it had I remembered that it was 900 pages.
Yeah.
And if you had remembered that Robert Jordan likes it, and therefore that's indicative that Lily might not like it.
Yeah. I got too swept away in the, I'm a big fan of this book to remember that, no, it's really not a Lily kind of book. It's really not. I'm sorry, Lily.
It'll make for a very nuanced discussion.
We'll have a lot of disagreements. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Okay, well, before I start explaining to everyone why you guys are wrong, let's start with something good that happened recently.
I got my Fiction Fans staff sweater, which is pretty good.
Yay!
Although I guess that wasn't this week. That was a couple weeks ago now, because I put it in the document, but I'm stupid and forgot that there was like 3 weeks between the document and now. So there you go.
It counts.
Yes.
It counts. I think my good thing is that I finally have a full-length mirror in my house.
Ooh.
I have not for the last 2.5 years. So now I do. And that's exciting.
My daffodils started blooming, and it's the best. I love daffodils.
We had a snowstorm last night, so we can keep our daffodils. There won't be any green here for another month at least.
I'm so sorry.
You can stuff your beautiful daffodils. I'm so jealous and I'm not handling it well.
Yeah, I needed them. I can't even imagine having to wait longer.
Yeah, it's been a long winter, but I guess it's always a long winter.
It has not been a long winter here. We have had very, very little winter, which is bad.
It must be distressing.
It is distressing. I mean, I imagine it's probably as like distressing, but in an opposite direction as a winter that goes on too long.
Well, I'm actually, like, as much as I complain about it, I'm pleased with the amount of snowfall we've had, because last year was a very dry winter.
Well, for some reason, what are you drinking tonight always messes me up when we're doing this in the middle of the day. I don't know why that's so hard for me.
Aren't you a day drinker? Jeez, Lily.
No, it's just the question.
Amateur.
It's just the phrasing of the question that I'm like, wait, hold on.
Oh, because it specifically says tonight?
Yeah. Because
I'm starting with...
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Oh, I say, because I'm drinking iced hibiscus tea with some vodka and honey, and it's wonderful.
Ooh, that sounds really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting with beer. I have an aged rye ale, which is quite sweet, so Sarah won't like it.
It's not it wouldn't probably be my kind of thing because it's beer anyway, but
I'm determined one day I will find you a beer that you'll like.
One day we'll go beer tasting sometime.
We have a beer around here that's aged in Scotch barrels, so like I could start there and maybe begin to convince you.
Possibly. That would probably be a good start.
Yeah. It's a smoked porter, so like it's almost like scotch that you can drink copious amounts of. So,
I mean, I can drink copious amounts of scotch too.
Well,
so.
You can drink more of this before you start melting.
Okay, fair.
I'll probably switch to whiskey after. I've got some pretty good stuff. So there you go. I'll melt this time, maybe.
I am drinking vodka tonic with plum vodka because it's almost plum season and I need to use up this plum vodka before I have to make more.
Oh, so you've made it yourself?
Yeah, well, when I say, I mean, it's basically Costco vodka infused with plums.
You infused it yourself. That counts.
Yeah,
So,
that's impressive.
yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. That's cool, Sarah. Stop trying to undercut your own interestingness. I'm not buying it.
My father has 3 plum trees, though, so I need a way of using plums up. A lot of plums.
Mail them to me.
Yeah.
Well, if you're here,
I can send you off with a bucket of plum vodka.
Yeah.
I will, in fact.
That sounds awesome.
Well, until then, because I'm going to have to wait a little bit. Anyone read anything good lately? I'll start. No.
Yeah. Do you have a follow-up for that?
No.
Okay.
I read Wintersmith by Terry Pratchett for continuing on my reading for March of the sequels. And then it's just been podcast books.
I've been reading Angela Bourd's upcoming novel. So I've read it once before and she revised it, and now I'm reading it again because yes, it is that good.
As expected from Angela.
Of course. It's called Through Dreams So Dark, and it's like a modern take on a Portal fantasy, and it's got some Cold War vibes, and it's got some spies, and it's really good.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah, me too. And I saw the cover earlier this week, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to hold that book in my hands and throw it at people. Make people read it. It's going to be a big one, but so good. She's really good with world building and character development and all that. I'm excited for that to release.
Me too.
So, Sarah, why did you do this to me?
Because I wasn't
Thomas.
Yes, because of Thomas, because I wasn't thinking how much you would hate this book. Although really I should have realized that in advance. Even though, I mean, I disagree with you. I think it's a good book. I enjoy it. Listeners, the face that Lily is making right now.
There are some things, to Krystle's point, which you might have done before we started recording, that are more of a matter of taste. But there are some things.
That was before we recorded.
Yeah, that was all before. That was like the pregame strategy session because we're that organized. It's heavy sarcasm. I feel like I'd like to read. I know it says the summary is an accurate representation, but I feel like the endorsements are kind of a wild ride. And my favorite for sure is Robert Jordan's endorsement. And I guess this was the signal that Sarah missed, that Lily wouldn't like the book. Robert Jordan says, a very sophisticated fantasy, intricately plotted, and a fascinating read. And that word fascinating is doing so much work. So much heavy lifting.
I feel like he probably enjoyed this a lot, given his
especially the
content.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm curious to know if his spanking content went up after he read this book.
I wish that I had noted down page numbers for all of the spanking in his books, so then I could calculate. I'm sure someone somewhere must have done that.
Yeah,
they must have. But this book, Kushiel's Dark, came out in 2001, which I think was after the 9th Wheel of Time book. So
that means nothing to me.
He wrote 3 other Wheel of Time books before he passed away.
And after this one came out?
After reading this. Yeah.
Did the spanking go up? Do you remember?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't.
Okay, you don't.
I should have noted it down.
We're gonna have to have a follow-up.
Sarah rereads Wheel of Time and counts how much.
Just if you have the ebooks, you can do a Control F of the word spank.
That's a good thought. Actually, I don't have the ebooks.
No.
I don't own the books at all. I borrowed them from a friend of mine.
Somebody who has the ebooks of Wheel of Time, please would you help us out so that we can confirm and or deny that the spank content has gone up after Kushiel's Dark.
But that's assuming he actually uses the word spank every time. Or is it like Kushiel's Dark, where there's lots of quivering buttocks?
Don't don't think Robert Jordan talks about quivering buttocks.
He's not fascinating enough.
That is one difference.
And that's why his spanking content is subpar.
It's not nearly descriptive enough. We need, if you're going to talk spanking, we need the red handprint. People, like, stop cutting corners.
Well, his spanking is all, and we've talked about this, but his spanking is all like weird, like a kink, but he doesn't want to admit it's a kink. And at least Kushiel's dart is very clear.
Oh yeah,
on
it's
that
sex
point.
stuff. That's fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Should we give any context at all?
Why? Isn't it funnier that we're all giggling about spanking?
Well, I did get a dumb, like, brain worm that I need to share with everyone, is that Phaedra, also, how do you pronounce any of the names in this book?
I mean, they're very French.
Yeah, it is very French, but then when I listened to the audiobook, they were pronouncing them in a French way, and it really made me struggle. I had to check, like, who they were talking about, because what I hear in my head when I look at the name is like miles away from what the audiobook says. So anyway, that's not a helpful answer at all. I apologize. Alyssa's making faces at me.
I'm going to make a lot of faces during this episode. They do travel at one point, and we get to see their names spelled out phonetically. So we got a couple of people. Yeah.
I must have been listening at that point.
When the Scaldi are trying to say their names. So I'm pretty sure Phaedra is Phaedra.
Yeah. Phaedra. Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway.
Okay.
She's touched by the gods, which means she cannot distinguish the difference between pleasure and pain.
Well, she's specifically she's marked by one god.
Kushiel.
Like,
yes.
Yeah, who's the god of, like, pain.
It means she's magically submissive. That's it. That was my brain worm that I needed to inflict on you.
Yeah, there's a lot to say. I mean, yeah, I think the back is indicative of what happens. They don't throw you any curveballs that don't make sense, which...
This isn't the back of the book, but when you first open it and get to page, past the map, 1, and it's just like 5 pages of people's names. No.
That is very indicative of what you're going to find.
Oh my God. I spent a couple of minutes looking at that, and then I had to put the book down and walk away.
Well, you just don't like books with big casts.
I was going to say, like, I was about halfway through this book, and I had, like, this epiphany that it's like, because I was worried that I was going to come on here and kind of, you know, yuck on both of you guys is yum.
No, only on mine.
Which actually makes me feel worse. But about halfway through, I had this epiphany where it's like, there's no way Lily likes this book, because she gave me a hard time for how many names there are in my book. And at least all the people in my book that are named appear on the goddamn page. Like, I think that was my biggest frustration with this book, is we hear so much about people we almost never see, and then the people that we do see are skimmed over so fast that I don't remember who they are. So I think that encapsulates the entirety of my problem connecting with this style of fantasy.
Yeah, I do think that that's a style preference.
Yeah,
because I personally really enjoy books where you really get a sense of scale, especially for something like this that is so broad in scope.
Yeah, and I'm definitely willing to admit this is a me thing and not a book thing, because in that fashion, she's very successful at what she does, and she speaks very directly to the genre.
Yeah,
as it was being built at the time, and so she fits in, but also has something new to say, and by that measure, it's a successful book. It's just it's hard for me.
Yeah, it's very definitely a style, and either it's a style that works for you or it's a style that doesn't. And if it's a style that doesn't, and we make you read 900 pages of it, I'm very sorry.
Yeah, international politics is not my jam in books. Interpersonal politics, super interesting.
I think I would have enjoyed it more if she had been more present with the people that were important. Like, I'll give an example. That prince, I keep wanting to say Bedouin, but that's wrong.
Yeah, Boudouin. Boudouin.
Do you know who I'm talking about? Baudouin. Yeah, Baudouin de Travaillon. He is so important to the unraveling of things. Oh, that's a spoiler. What I'm about to say is a spoiler. Okay, we'll circle back to Mr. de Travaillon.
But no, it's a lot of people talking about stuff that happened
that we don't
actually see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that style, I agree with you, Lily, that it's really hard for me to connect to these people because I just don't have the attention span for it. I don't. And my favorite thing about fantasy, or in fact any storytelling, is character work. And it's definitely why I'm such a big fan of Mrs. Board, where she tackles that big politics feeling, but it's all through Kira's relationships. She makes it valid to the way Kira's life is totally falling apart. And so she's able to make you care about what's at stake. And it's another first person book, and it's only a little bit shorter than Kushiel's Dart, but somehow it's less dense. So whereas Carey's style is just, you have to remember this, now let's go, hurry up, and like we're moving. And I struggled.
But that's definitely, that's just a genre that I don't connect with. That is not my example of that is an example of it just not being to taste. This book is also a perfect example of why first person point of view is bad and wrong. Because no one talks like that.
But that doesn't, I don't think that that's really an issue. I think that's an issue for me personally.
Yeah, I don't think it's a first person issue either. I think it's just a style issue again, because I think I know what you're saying is the way Phaedra goes on and on about how beautiful she is. Specifically,
well, that, or is it especially, but just the prose itself, it's so like
it's very
pointlessly convoluted, and I'm like, why? What does this bring to the table?
I think that's less first person and more the genre at the time.
But if it was third person, it would bother me less because it's just the narration. But I'm supposed to believe a human being is talking like that? No, I don't.
I don't know. I've heard some pretty convoluted people go on and on about how great they are, so I buy it.
Yeah, again, I think that this is a personal preference. It is very, like you said, Krystle, it is very stiff.
The times I have heard people bewail the fact that our destinies are shrouded in mystery.
That doesn't bother me.
It should.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
no.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me either. I think the stiffness just comes from probably her influences rather than the actual point of view.
Yeah, like I think that's more early 2000s fantasy writing.
In 90s too. Like I suspect there was a long production tail on this book because she's chunky.
Yeah. I wish that I knew when she started writing this. It's probably listed somewhere, but yeah.
I just know how long it took me to get 220,000 words up to snuff.
I'm sure she started writing way in advance of the publication date.
Yeah, and so Kushiel's Dart is 276,000 words. I bet there was a long tail on that.
That doesn't make the prose acceptable in any way. There's a reason people stopped doing it, isn't there?
I think it's a good thing that the genre has diversified, but you still find writing like this.
That doesn't.
Oh, yes.
Good.
And that just means that it's not for you. It doesn't make it bad.
Some things are not for me. That's true. This is not an example of that. Just because it doesn't bother you doesn't mean it is good. It just means it didn't.
Just because it bothers you doesn't mean it's bad.
No.
Yeah.
It bothers me because it's bad. Two different things.
You're wrong.
I'm sorry. I have to stand with Sarah on this because I can see the poetic influences that she's reaching for, and I think that's a valid way of expressing. it does get very dense.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why it would be hard to read it for 900 pages.
She's more focused on a beautiful turn of phrase than the weight of emotions that should be going along.
Well, then why are none of them beautiful? You have, if you're trying,
they can be. Did you get to the battle in the snowstorm?
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I gotta parse out the spoiler that I'm going to say. I thought that scene leaned really well into her skills for the first large chunk of it, where in that moment it felt good and true and right that it would be so disconnected from emotion because it was so ethereal. And that scene was an excellent example of how poetic she can be in a way that carries action well, until the part that I didn't like. And I'll say that later. But I think in some ways, if the balance had shifted, it wouldn't have taken a whole lot for all that poetry to start carrying more emotion, and it would have hit better for our tastes. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just complicated.
The descriptions of action I thought were fine. That didn't bother me at all. It's whenever Phaedra is musing to herself, she gets incredibly convoluted and introspective, and the sentences are mess.
You know what I noticed? There's this funny little tell where she goes, "I'm not going to tell you about what happened," and then she spends about 20 minutes telling us exactly what happened in like the most detail possible. And that was like just a really weird world building tell that once I noticed it, every time she said, "I'm not going to tell you what transpired upon that mountain," I was like, oh God, here we go. I better speed up the recording so I can get through this. So there's just a weird imbalance of what I can't even figure out exactly what happened there, because I feel like an editor would have noticed that and flagged that. But then if they didn't flag it, that means they think it's serving a purpose. But like what purpose does that specifically serve other than letting you know to get ready to skim like a couple of pages of her? Yeah, I have a complicated relationship with this book and I feel really bad. I feel like we should give Sarah some time to express what worked for her before.
Well, her clock just went off, so she has to wait longer. But I did note down something that I liked about this book, so we can switch topics to something I'm not complaining about. I didn't hate everything.
I can do that too. So you go first.
So, as much as the prose bothered me, which, we'll just move on from that. I really enjoyed the little like ominous nuggets of foreshadowing that are kind of sprinkled throughout, especially in the first half of the book. I think I have one.
Yeah, I think that this book does a really good job of letting you know that there are things that are going to happen later on and then following through with that.
Does your book have 901 pages? So 222 is... Yeah, this thing, I don't know. I have complaints about.
Well, I don't actually see where I wrote it, so that's not helpful. Like,
okay.
What did I do? I'm not actually talking about the person who can actually see the future. I'm saying when Phaedra is telling us something and then goes, which of course I would find out different later. That kind of thing I really enjoyed.
Yeah. There was definitely really good narrative techniques used. And then I had an epiphany because I see you mention it about the concept of consent is
whack.
And I was going to complain about it too. And I had an epiphany at page 148. Now let's see which of my bookmarks that is.
So I did find my foreshadowing example, which I don't think is a spoiler. Well, it's the book spoiling it, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Even Childrick Dessums, who knew in his bones that Delaunay had a game at stake, never fathomed my part in it until the day I told him.
Mm-hmm.
That was good.
Yeah. Yeah, she was good at layering dread, that's for sure. Like, all the way through this, you knew that it was going to go to shit eventually. Because she made sure to let you know, like, you think it's wild now, folks. Just you wait. And then I had an epiphany about the world building, because I was going to complain that the world building about sex is super inconsistent. Because she spends the first, I don't know, 100 pages telling us how beautiful and holy sex is and how perfectly God blessed her and her fellow prostitutes are. And, you know, they're worshiping, and it's very poetic. But, you know, there's always this awareness that she started telling us about this when she was a child, and it feels weird. But I had an epiphany at about page 150 where she starts interacting with people outside of her order, and they treat her with blatant disrespect. So much so that a couple times I had to, like, take a lap and take a breath, because it was just so... Ugh. But I wonder if that dichotomy was a feature rather than a bug, because I started to wonder if it's a conversation that she's trying to have with us as a society and science fiction and fantasy as a genre, where we build this story that we love women as a society and as a genre, where knights are going off to protect their beautiful women. But in fact, the truth of it is that femininity is not cherished at all. It's in fact, it's a toy for men to play with. And they make beautiful poetry about how much they love women, and then don't really care much about consent. And so I wonder if either the world building was really inconsistent, or it was directly on purpose. And it's a brilliant essay about what consent even looks like in a world where the desires and the value of even women who enjoy sex are less important than what men want from them. So in that, I think it was successful that it made you really think about the world that she's writing about and the world that she is writing to, and our place in the genre as women, and stories at the time pretending that they were talking about love, but they're not really. I can't think of any offhand, but there's just a feeling that the genre at the time was kind of a harrowing place to be as a female writer. So I have to admire her for what she did there.
I'm inclined to think it was on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I mean, yeah. If I came to it so early, I'm inclined to agree. Like if like if it clicked at about 150 pages in, and in that, this book is brilliant, that she was able to package that in a way that was purposefully uncomfortable, but also entertaining. And so the conversation that she has with science fiction and fantasy, I'm here for it. Like, I think in that the book is brilliant.
I could have done without being told how a 7-year-old derived sexual pleasure from being whipped.
Yeah.
I didn't need that. could have done without that part. But yeah, it's very high concept, right? Sex work as a religious institution, which I actually have no problem with. Wacky consent when it's like the whole point.
When it's the point,
when it's very purposeful.
There's a difference between when somebody's written something and they're trying to say that it was good, and you're like, no, that is sexual assault. Please don't do that for real. But in this, she's making you face it, and I admire her for that. So yeah, I agree there.
I don't think it even needs to be necessarily philosophical in nature, like rape fantasies.
Yeah, boy, are there lots of those.
But exploring rape fantasies is a totally reasonable thing to do in pornography. And I don't think you always have to go and now watch the characters do the negotiation first. Like, no, just have the fantasy. It's fake. It's fiction. It's fine.
It gives people a tool to kind of talk about and examine their own life experience. And for that, I do believe that this kind of deeply uncomfortable stuff has value. I just wish it was written better.
For me, it's the length.
Yeah.
Like something weird and indulgent where it's like we're just gonna go all out weird. That's great for like 20,000 words.
Too much girth for you, is that what we're hearing?
It's true. I said it. I didn't say it. You said it.
I said it.
But I do not deny it.
Brought the dirty sex joke to the sex book.
Yeah.
I do think that this book is important, though, because I feel like it really paved the way for a lot of this kind of more modern exploration that we get now.
Yes.
And you wouldn't have that if you didn't have Kushiel's Dart in 2001, talking about these uncomfortable
pushing
topics and pushing boundaries, and bringing sex really to the forefront of this fantasy.
And femininity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't let me cut you off, Sarah. Keep going.
No, I mean, that was basically the end of what I was saying, but so you didn't cut me off.
I definitely agree. And for all that I didn't connect to the style of the world building, I can acknowledge that this book blazed a trail that I am currently walking on, and a lot of my friends are currently walking on, because, we have the space to build more femininity into the genre and more sexuality into the genre, because Jacqueline Carey came through with a machete for us,
or a flechette.
Yes, several dozen flechettes. Yeah, so it's very much indicative of the genre at the time. So you can't fault it for writing to its own genre in a way. And it's easy for us to say, 21 years later that it's dated, but it, obviously it wasn't dated at the time 21 years ago. So.
Yeah, I think that this is one of the first books that I read, and I read it probably pretty close to when the paperback came out in about 2002. But it was really one of the first books that confronted sex and femininity in a way. Like, I'd read sexual content in other books, but not as focused on the female perspective and female pleasure.
Yes.
And how that intersects with like a man's world.
Yeah.
And how she's really able to use it as power.
Mm-hmm.
And she drives, her and Melisandre arguably drive the entire plot. So it's very much an answer to the genre at the time, where male kings and male warlords and male knights were rampaging through their various worlds, and women were kind of passive observers of it all. So for Phaedra and Melisandre to drive pretty much the entirety of the plot.
Not just this book, but they, like, their relationship and their power struggles between the two of them, really, I think, drive books 2 and 3 as well.
Is that a spoiler? This is really hard.
No, yeah. I don't think that's a spoiler. I mean,
okay.
I think saying that their interactions are integral to the plot is, I mean, you could guess that.
Yeah.
Not a surprise.
I don't think it's really a surprise that Melisandre escapes, because it's obvious that she's, the baddie pretty quickly, I think.
Well, she's the match, the only match for the Anguissette, which is the fancy word they use for masochist. Magical masochist.
Magical masochist. I'm putting that in my Twitter bio.
And I think that's, again, one of the places where Jacqueline Carey does really well at foreshadowing. Like, when Melisandre first shows up in the book, like, it, we get some hints that she's not just going to be a kind friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Is anyone in this book kind?
I would say Delaunay is a pretty cool dude. This is spoilers.
Is he, though? He bought a child and groomed her for prostitution and continuously flirted with her. Is that kind? Is that a cool dude?
Well, are we working within the realm of this book?
I guess so.
I think he's well-intentioned, but not necessarily always kind.
Predatory.
Yeah.
But I mean, he exists in a world where that's celebrated.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying, like, I don't think we always need to apply real world, like realism in relationships to fictional work.
I guess it is worth commenting that childhood innocence is a very modern concept. And it's always something that I have to try to remember when I'm engaging with a lot of genres. It's a very modern concept, and it seems to be a very North American concept.
I would argue that grooming and childhood innocence aren't exactly the same thing.
I think that if you go by in-world mechanics and in-world values, he's not necessarily grooming her in the way that we as a modern reader interpret it.
Yeah, we already declared this book has wacky consent.
Yeah.
So we're just talking about it inside that framework.
Yeah, I think this is a subset of, yes, the whole concept of this book is hinged around wacky consent.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, fair.
And there's kind of no way to talk about it more deeply without just saying, yes, that is true.
Yeah, you're right.
And we must move on.
Let's move on.
Otherwise, we'll just spend the whole time going, why does she see using her safe word as a failure? That's not how that's supposed to work.
Yeah, that's literally the opposite of how safe words are designed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but okay. Yeah. That's just how the book is. Move on.
I have a line editing comment about the word beauty before we get into spoilers, where I would love to have the ebook to do like a control F of how many times the word beauty occurs in the first 150 pages, because holy crap, are we ever subjected to a lot of very unspecific expressions of how beautiful everybody is. And that's an example of why it was hard for me to connect to anything that happens in the book, because we're told things, but we're never shown things, where we're told that literally everyone is beautiful because they're Dangeline. And if this book's going to be horny, could it just be horny, please? Like, can we have some staring at asses and some thinking about the shape of people's lips instead of just being told, and so very beautiful.
But I think that's 2020, 2022, where we can actually be specific about how we're going to be horny in writing.
Well,
and in 2001.
Okay, I'll give you the point on the horniness, because yes, I will say that it's evolved, but it's just kind of indicative of the whole way that she tells a story, where when people start dying, for example, we're told that they die, and we're actually told like second or third hand because someone tells her and now she's telling us. And then she says something about how emotional she is, but we never actually see an expression of emotion. It's just, and I wept, and then we're moving on. And so it made it hard to connect. But man, the word beauty, my point was, and then at some point she tries to tell us that she's not easily awed by beauty, specifically on page 64. And you may be sure I am not easily awed by beauty, except literally the last 64 pages, she's been telling us how amazingly beautiful she and everyone around her is. And it's just a weird world-building quirk where she tries to tell us a couple of times that beauty doesn't impress her, but then the reason she loves Melisandre is because Melisandre is beautiful. So it's like, which is it, friend? Which is it? It's just, and I think because I'm in the middle of revising a book and trying to cut down on repetition, that bugged me so much.
If you notice a word, you can never unnotice it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I do have one counterpoint though to the vague descriptions of beauty.
Uh-oh.
Except for eye color. You know the exact shade of everyone's eyes.
Yes. Yes. And we're told many, many, many times how incredibly beautiful Phaedra is, with her very curly hair and her red pricked eye. And it's a weird thing to repeat, because it's like, we remember that from the first 17 times that we're told, why do you keep telling us through the rest of the book when we could be spending words on other things like what's happening and why that person's dying? So yeah, there's just a weird balance of how she spends words, specifically the word beauty. Unlimited budget.
Or maybe we're not giving her enough credit, and that's a comment on Phaedra and how she sees herself versus how she actually is. She thinks she's unimpressed by beauty, but is actually obsessed with it.
Oh, that's a really good counterpoint, and I will concede the floor to you, ma'am.
I'm less sure of that as I am about the consent stuff, but
yeah, the consent was the point.
Yeah.
The beauty may be a line editing issue.
All right. I should probably admit this before we get to the spoiler section, but I haven't actually finished the book. I'm damn close, though.
Do you actually intend to finish it?
Well, yeah, because I just got to the cool part.
Okay.
There's stuff happening now. In the last 100 pages of the book, I'm like, oh, now I'm into this. I can't say why, because that would be a spoiler, but...
Is it really the last 100 pages where she's against the...
It's like 200. I'm at like almost exactly at page 7.
The Master of the Straits, right?
Yeah, the Master of the Straits.
Yeah, okay, about 200 pages. Godspeed to you.
I mean, I read enough of the book to talk about it. I could do actual math. That's like 80% of the book. I read a lot of the book. It's fine. But I do, in the spirit of honesty.
Try not to mention anything that happens after.
No, I have questions.
Most of my death complaints happen early in the book, so I feel like once again, poor Sarah. What did you like about the book, Sarah? Why should people read it?
Well, if you're someone who likes political stories,
yeah, like
then it's going to be a book for you.
Yeah, you know what? If you liked Robert Jordan, and you liked that political high fantasy, and also you want to be deeply uncomfortable, but also slightly aroused by people bleeding, Kushiel's dark, baby.
It's like Wheel of Time, but more sincere with its horniness.
Sensual spanking.
Which that's so much better. Just 100 times better.
Arguably, the weird conversation about sex is the best part of the book, because it's challenging. And it's like there's nothing wrong with sexual content as fun, but this sexual content is going to make you think about what you think about sexual content. Holy shit. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, if you enjoy really grand world building, which is not without its own issues, the world building in this book, but
were we going to talk about the Scaldi? I guess we can talk about that in the spoiler section.
Yeah, we can talk about some of the world building issues that we have in the spoiler section.
Okay.
The Scaldi come in pretty late, so I think that's.
But if you like this kind of really high concept world building with a lot of political intrigue and like politics, and you don't mind some kind of odd consent issues, and if you're interested in having that kind of dialogue about consent and sex, and if the 2000s fantasy writing style is something that you enjoy, then I think that this book is for you.
No, we're both making faces.
I gotta say, the consent stuff is so upfront. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
It's the books that are trying to go, this is a normal, happy relationship. And you're clawing your eyes out saying, no,
you are being abused. Yeah.
This is a weird world. Jump in. That's fine.
This book is very upfront about that.
Yeah.
And I think it should get a lot of props for that.
Well, and there's something very, like, it's presented to you as fantasy, and it's like, this is world building, but there's something very real about what she's trying to say about how we view female bodies as things that men have a right to.
Well,
and it's
honestly, though, to be fair, the sex workers are not all women, and the patrons are not all men.
Yeah, I guess so. But even the male is feminine.
Yeah, well, everyone's beautiful.
Yeah, except for one dude that was handsome once she was with the Scaldi.
Right.
one guy.
Dude, the poor Scaldy got done so dirty by this book. I have a lot of opinions.
I feel like all of the cultures except for the French got done dirty. And
that's my big problem with it, because like I really like how it's based on our Earth geography, but it suffers from the point of view civilization is civilized and everyone else are barbarians. And there's not a lot
so very exotic.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, he tells the future. The Arab culture really bugged me. I almost quit.
There's not a lot of nuance and development there. And I think that's an area that it really falls short in.
But again, isn't that very indicative of the genre at the time?
Yes.
Where cultures were flattened to very definitive.
But that's a great example of just because that was a genre convention doesn't mean that makes it good. Yeah, that just means I understand why she did it.
Yes.
This is where I get worried that my fantasy fan credentials are going to be revoked, because this is why I stopped reading the genre at the time. Mm-hmm. Because David Gemmell died and he was doing something very unique at the time. And then there were no more David Gemmell books and I left fantasy. So I bounced off of all of the big classics that people talk about. And it's like my dirty secret. Every time it comes up in chat rooms and on Twitter, it's like, no, I didn't do that book. No, I didn't do that one either. But then when I came back, cultural examinations had leveled up. And so when I came back, there was a lot to discover. So hats off to the guys that published in about 10 years later who were speaking to the past of the genre where cultures were really flat.
She's written a book from Jocelyn's point of view that covers the events of Kushiel's Dart. And that's supposed to come out next year, I believe, in 2023. And it will be interesting to see whether or not she has been able to kind of bring some of that modern sensibility and depth to the other cultures that aren't just terre d'ange.
It's not a flat world. Phaedra's just racist.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It does. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if that is what's happening, because she, in spite of the weird consent issues, she's very sheltered and very pampered. So it could very well be that we're just seeing it through her limited worldview. Because all she's got of the world is what Delaunay's taught her. And so it rings true, where it's hard to grasp what other cultures are doing. But she kind of flattens her own culture too, where she's always talking about, and the Dangelines admire beauty over nothing else. And the Dangelines are all so very beautiful. And the beauty of the Dangeline culture. And it's like, what else do you guys do? Do you have any import? Do you farm? Can you tell me about,
no, it's
farming
just
culture?
It's just beauty.
It's just
beauty.
They
Nothing
farm,
else.
but only flowers.
No, they farm prostitutes and sell them to other cultures, and their economy is entirely sex-based, which,
See, I would read that book, though. That sounds wild.
See, that's the kind of politics that I'm interested in. Sarah, I feel really bad that you're here listening to us shit on your book.
That's okay. That's okay.
Hey, we found nice things to say.
Yeah,
we're not only being mean.
And I can certainly acknowledge what she did at the time had to have been. She shook up the genre, and I've got to give her props for that. I'm just salty about all the world building.
And again, yes, I really enjoy the book, but it's like I've said, it's not without problems, and I can acknowledge that for all that I enjoy it. So I don't think that your criticism is invalid most of the time. Yeah. I think some of Lily's criticisms about the point of view are.
Yeah.
The remainder of this episode contains spoilers. Okay, I stopped reading right when she meets the spooky ocean master, aka the best part of the book.
So have you actually gotten to Alba yet?
No. Okay. I just got to the spooky ocean.
Right. Okay.
The back end of this book is a blur because I felt like
I almost drank whiskey for this recording because they talk about whiskey so much in the last 200 pages.
I had to come running. By the time they talk about whiskey, I was onto the audiobook, and the narrator pronounces it Ishka. Yeah. Sarah's making faces because that's not how it's pronounced. And I had to come running back to the book to see, like, what the fuck is Ishka? What are you talking about? And it's I have specifically Ishka with an I and an SH and a K. I bet everyone appreciates how I just spelled the word thing. But I have it as Ishmael's matron god, the god of or the goddess of the soul. And I had to come running back to go like, oh no, does it look like I stole it? But no, that's not at all what is written in this book. And it feels like even the narration is inconsistent in its own world building, where it's French. Phaedra is very obviously French, and most of the names in this book are very obviously French, but they picked a British accent. She has a lovely speaking voice, but none of the things that she says was frustrating.
Wrong audiobook narrator for the book.
No. And it's like the level of detail that Jacqueline Carey built into making her French culture was so loving and elaborate, and then to do her dirty by picking a British accent. Why? Because all fantasy is narrated by British accents? Is that what's happened? Like, it's I give up.
Yeah, I think that would be, for me, a very, like, auditory disconnect.
It was. I had learned the names by the time I moved to the audiobook, although I don't remember how far I switched over. I had learned the names and I could hear them in my head as French names, and then when I switched to the audiobook, I had to learn them all over again because it's just not pronouncing them right, which is, I tell you, about 300 pages into the book is a terrible time to try to learn all the names because boy, are there a lot of them. So anyway, I learned some stuff about audiobook production and why certain things are really important. Random ramble about audiobooks.
I just didn't even try with the names. They just censored noise in my head every time I got to one, and was like, if this is important, they will explain to me what's going on, and if it's not, then I do not care. It worked fine.
Yeah, she throws a lot of names at you.
I seriously, like, that first section where it's just all the characters, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Well, I guess it's there so that you can refer back. I mean,
guess. I see a lot of readers who on book Twitter who say that they really want a cast of characters list included.
I'm not mad that there's a list. I'm using that as a physical representation of how long and how many names each person has. And it's not just names, but also there's all of the families and then all of the houses and then all of the lands. Like, that's too much.
I never understood what the houses were. Or are they meant to be like churches, or are they like nobility?
There's two different kinds. There's the house.
They're always talking about the house that she was rejected from. So,
I mean, I think that there's
those are the
different
houses,
the prostitution schools.
Yeah, that's what she was talking about at the beginning.
Yeah,
and then there's the noble family lines, which is also kind of called houses.
But she also calls them houses.
Yeah,
like Sirius. See, that was not a French name. This is why I really struck. I think it is Sirius.
Yeah, Sirius is part of the night court. Like, that's one of the prostitution houses.
Okay. Some of the things that I had trouble with were, do you know what I mean when I say a conceit? Mm-hmm. A conceit of world building, where a statement is made and you have to just accept it and follow the reasoning. So there are some conceits that I couldn't follow, where it's like, I mean, I guess if the magic is scary, like, were they afraid that she was magic, or are they calling the speck in her eye an imperfection, and now she's not beautiful enough to be a prostitute? Like, I didn't get that.
I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. Like, I think that mostly each of the different houses in the Night Court have their different canons of what all of the members need to look like in terms of like physicality. And so that spec means that she doesn't fit that. She doesn't fit any of them. And then also, like, they don't really understand how to deal with an Anguisset, except maybe for the Kushiel house, which I don't remember.
Valerian.
Yeah, why didn't she end up there then? Like,
she doesn't end up there because Delaunay found her first.
Oh, okay.
No, because Sirius knew that Delaunay would pay more.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, I missed that because she front loads so much information that it got hard to pick up on the important details.
And I think that I did have the benefit of having read this multiple times. Like, this wasn't my first read.
Okay, so you were.
Yeah.
And then another conceit that I found really weird. Let's see if I bookmarked it. I don't know why she told us so friggin' much about her parents, considering we never see them.
Man, the first part of this book was rough for me, you guys.
It was.
I think I spent more time reading the first 200 pages than I did the rest of it.
I'm going to agree. I'm going to hard agree. And I recognize that this is a me thing, where my own relationship with what femininity is supposed to be makes it really hard for me to connect to the friend end of this book, because she spends a solid 200 pages telling us that the only acceptable femininity is graceful and beautiful and submissive. And you know what I'm about to say, Lily. And I get that she's trying to do a world building thing there. And I also get that she's trying to talk to the genre, a genre where at the time femininity was erased and treated as a currency, but it made it really, really hard. And I almost put it down. And I'm glad that I didn't. I'm glad that I got through it, because I learned a lot about who I want to be as a writer. But the first couple hundred pages were rough for me. So yeah. It's a weird expression of femininity where the only beauty is delicate, and then everybody tries to destroy it, which is probably the point. But man, this book makes you think stuff.
I don't know why we spend like 500 pages in the city of Eloah, which is also the most boring place on earth. As soon as they left, I was like, yes, give me the not exactly Norseman mountain adventure.
That's what I was talking about with Word Budget, where she spends an unusual amount of time trying to establish the city and also how wild sex is going to be. And then she immediately stops telling us about the wild sex, where I would have liked to have seen fewer details about the sex at the beginning and have it hit really hard when she's a captive, and have it hit really hard when she sleeps with, we're in the spoiler section, right?
Yes.
We are in the spoiler section.
When she sleeps with Jocelyn and Hyacinth, because all of the details we get are in the first third of the book or so about.
We get all the transaction sex, but none of the
but
emotional.
I think that that's a commentary on Phaedra as a person, because she doesn't know, like, she knows how to deal with the transactional sex, but she doesn't really know how to deal with the emotions that are involved with the more personal sex.
I would buy that if we got to see her not being able to deal with it, if that makes sense. Where like we are told very clinically the details of what people do to her, and she has no particular emotion about it, which is fine. But then all of the luster. She's used up all of the uniqueness of what she's going to bring to a sex scene. And then so at about halfway through the book, we stop getting details about what her sex life looks like, which makes me sound really voyeuristic. But then she starts having situations that are fucking wild, where and it's like, I would have rather she cut the first 300 pages out of this book and just told us, I'm a prostitute and my life is weird, yo. And then
record scratch. I bet you're wondering how I got here.
Yeah, exactly. And then we could have jumped into the Scaldi and it would be like, what the fuck is happening? And it would have been great. But she used her word budget really weird, where she told us all these details about flechettes and whipping posts about 17 times. And then when things suddenly are really important to what's happening, the details disappear. And it's a weird balance.
Yeah, I would be okay with Sarah's reason for doing it, but it makes it less enjoyable for me as a reader. Yeah. Even if she had a good reason, it's like, well, that's not fun. Give me more fun.
Although, like, if we got to see her messy emotions, I think I would have enjoyed it more. Like, even if she kept that balance and then we got to see how unequipped she is with emotional, I don't know, breakdowns or something, I think I would have enjoyed it more, because it would have said more. Because I'm fine with the fade to black stuff. Like, I get it. But then at the same time, it was that telling and not showing again, where it's like, we're told this was emotional for me, but then we don't get anything to interact with. We're just moving on.
Maybe she only wanted to write kinky sex.
Listen, Hyacinth is kinky for sure. For sure. So we could have had some.
And what's kinkier than breaking your vow? The most forbidden.
Jocelyn is not kinky, though. You cannot tell me that Jocelyn is kinky.
No, he isn't.
No, but the situation is still forbidden.
For sure.
I was super into her and Jocelyn's like budding relationship and how they like get closer during their imprisonment. All of that. I was like, yes, great, excellent.
I like them, yeah. Mm-hmm. I feel like I had nice things to say and I forgot all of them because I got so heated.
Like, we also see her relationship with Hyacinth over the years, which was very good. Those two relationships are the only like human connections that we see, and they're the best parts of the book.
Yes, see, that's where I get frustrated with the balance. I would have liked more time her loving the people in her life, or not knowing how to love the people in her life, and less time hearing about people we never see on the page. What's his name? Osue, yeah. Okay. Osue got done dirty. Fucking dirty. The other prostitute, Delawny's other people. And Guy got done dirty. I think I tried to read this book when I was a teenager, so possibly when it came out, because everything up until Guy dies is familiar, and then I think I was like, fuck this. I left. But it's an interesting inversion of the Phrygian trope. So like now that I'm older, I can acknowledge what she did.
I don't know if it's still bury your gaze though.
Gosh, it sure is.
One of them was buried before the book even starts.
Yeah.
I gotta say, that twist did kind of blow my mind. I did not see Delawny having been in love with the prince. I was like, yeah, I didn't think she was going to go there. It was great.
Yeah. I have a complicated relationship with that because of the bury your gaze. But then at the same time, I have to acknowledge at the time it would have been groundbreaking. It would have been.
I think for 2001, it does a really great job of actually having gay characters and people who aren't just straight. But it also,
reading it in 2021 is deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah, they all get killed off. So,
yeah, and
that was actually one of my comments at the beginning of the book. Was she claimed, or the narrator has claimed that there's prostitutes of both genders, and
we never see any of them.
We for a long time only see heterosexual pairings just at all. And so
but I think that's I suspect that's the time where she pushed the envelope as hard as she could, given the shape of the genre at the time. So, I mean,
she even proved me wrong eventually, right? Like, we do actually end up seeing same-sex relationships, and I was like, whoa.
And to be fair, she buries a lot of straight white guys too. So
that's true.
Groundbreaking.
I think the difference there is that we still have straight white guys alive at the end of the book.
Yeah.
Well, Phaedra's definitely bisexual.
Yes, she is bi.
So the author doesn't kill every gay.
Everyone except the main character.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I need the Hyacinth Jocelyn fan fiction at the, those boys did stuff, and I'm aware of it. I can feel it. I
think the whole Kushiel's Dart, all of the 9 books that are part of this.
There are 9?
Well, no. So Phaedra's story is just the first 3, and then it's 3 trilogies that are connected but standalone.
Okay, so they're the same world, 3 trilogies in the same.
They're in the same world. There is some character overlap, but there's a time progression, or you don't have to have read the first 3 books to enjoy any of the other trilogies.
Okay.
Yeah, but so it's a large enough series that there probably is actually fan fiction of it.
Oh, is that where you're going? There's got to be fan fiction of this.
That was all. That was all.
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely fan fiction for this.
For sure, it's big enough that. And I bet there's a lot of queer fan fiction for it, because she gave us some crumbs that people are going to eat up,
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm researching. Is that what they call it? It might not be called Kushiel's Dart, huh?
It's
Kushiel's Legacy.
Yeah.
Not that much, actually.
But there is some.
Oh, yeah.
I noticed there tends to be a lot more fan fiction for worlds where there aren't any in-world queer characters. And so when there are in-world queer characters on the page explicitly, there's a really sharp drop-off, because people feel fulfilled and seen, so they don't feel the need to stuff the gaps with their own. So that doesn't actually surprise me. I would be curious, although I can't possibly commit to reading any more of these books, but I would be curious to know if she went further with the expressions of queerness, because the way she acknowledges it is definitely, there's definitely a feeling that it was very intentional, especially paired with her comments on femininity in SFF. So
it's been, I don't know, maybe 10 years since I've read the rest of the books in the series, but I'm pretty sure that at least if she doesn't go further in the Kushiel's Legacy trilogy, I think she does in the subsequent trilogies.
I wish I connected to her writing more, because I would be interested, but I just...
I mean, not every author is for every person.
That's so true.
Would you like to hear something crazy? There are more teen and up rated fic than there are explicit fic.
Really?
She's got the explicit covered.
Yeah, she does have explicit covered.
What can you say? What more can you add to the sexual universe? You have to get pretty... We
don't have any scenes with... Actually, I don't know that. Maybe they're hidden at the back of the book. Just kidding.
I don't think that her...
There isn't any more explicit sex after where you are.
Okay. So then we don't see any, I guess because it's the first person, how could we see 2 men together? Because she would have to be there.
She could watch. Hello. She obviously likes the sight of a nice cock, so why can't she just watch?
I don't actually think that the sex scenes are that explicit in these books. They have some super kinky content, but
they're surprisingly unsexy for how detailed they are. They're very clinical.
She really likes to describe how great the pain is. That's it.
And pain bloomed red behind my eyes in my vision. And that was another thing. So this will be a spoiler for you, Lily. She goes to great lengths to explain to her how exquisite the pain is when she's being flogged. But then somebody tries to skin her alive, peels a chunk of flesh off her back. And she goes, it hurts a lot. And then it's done. And then we're over it. And it's like, why would you go through all the trouble to establish this and then give us something like that and then fade to black?
I also thought it was kind of inconsistent, her Kushiel's dart Anguisette situation, because she's describing how sore she is from learning how to ride a horse and is like, everything sucks and I'm in pain.
Yeah, shouldn't that also be sexually pleasure? One of the conceits that I struggled with so much, and then I got distracted by everything else, was she has this really poetic moment where she says, the first time I discovered pain was when I pricked myself with a needle and I sunk it into my... Yeah, I remember the moment when I discovered pain, and she tells us for a chapter about pushing a needle into her
thumb?
Hand. Hand. Like the fleshy part of her hand. And it's a weird conceit because it's like...
Also when she's 6.
Has she never fallen down?
Yeah. Skinned and
Has she never bumped into furniture? How is that?
That's what it is. It seems only intentionally inflicted pain sparks this.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Yeah. Now, Sarah, you've read it a few times. Are we wrong?
Well, I have also said that it's been 10 years since I've read the other 2 books in this particular trilogy. There was one scene in particular that I was expecting to be in this book, but it obviously wasn't.
Lily, you were going to rant about the Scaldi.
I was. Dude.
Do it.
What? Why? Phaedra spends so much time talking about how terrible they are and how them invading would mean the end of civilization, right after very clearly stating that they want a kingdom because they want to be, quote unquote, more civilized. And it's like, dude, they kind of seem like better kings than your guys have.
Honestly. And then, you know what? This was another conceit that really hit me weird, where the king, what's his name? Selig?
Yeah, Selig. Yeah.
Was explaining to his people that they couldn't march in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I bet these people know that. I bet they know how hard it is to go anywhere in the winter, because I bet they know it more than the people in the city would know it. These people are farmers. They know how much it sucks to be outside in the winter. So there was always these little moments where I was just starting to get immersed, and then she'd say these wild ass things that made no sense, and I'd be like, girlfriend. And it's once again it's the farmers are stupid, which I really hate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone who's not from City of Elua
is stupid and barbaric
and uncivilized
and exotic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, the Scaldi were super cool. Definitely my favorite portion of the book. Or that's when I started enjoying the book, and it wasn't like, oh, I have to read this now, don't I?
That was a good example of what we were saying earlier about how well she layered in the foreshadowing, because there's a point in the book where you're like, she's going to go see these badass fuckers, isn't she? Because she talks about them so specifically and so often, more so than any other culture, where you're like, that's going to be bad, and I'm going to like it.
But I loved all of the time we spent with them, learning about their culture and seeing them interact, and also seeing, the jealousy and how she tries to deal with that when she does try to deal with it. And then when she's with the second group of Scaldi, she's just like, everyone hates me because I'm too pretty, and so I just don't talk to them. And
then she goes back to the I think the best example of how quickly she jerks me out of her own world building was that scene I mentioned with the battle in the snow with Jocelyn and what's the Scaldy guy's name? The guy that was nice to her.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I should clarify. When she's with the first group of Scaldy,
Yeah,
because she's actually trying interpersonal politics. She's trying to like find a place with these people. And in the second group, she's just completely disconnected and it's not interesting anymore.
It's Harold, I guess, that she
beardless. I remember he's the beardless because he's young. It's sad.
And that battle or that fight with Jocelyn and her watching was so good. It was so good that I had like whole body shivers because it was just like the snow and the fighting and her watching it. But then she steals the dagger from this kid and he doesn't notice. And she says to him, "Let me go or I'll kill you." And he completely ignores her. And then she kills him. And it's like, I don't know, Phaedra. I don't buy that.
To be fair, he probably didn't take her very seriously because he hasn't seen any indication that she has any kind of ability to kill people.
But then how did she get the dagger out of his possession without him noticing?
I actually think that's a dagger she stole earlier.
No, they specifically...
Really? Wild.
Yeah, she specifically takes it from him while he's holding on to her and they're watching. And I guess what they're trying to say is that he's so intent on watching what's happening, but it's just an interruption of immersion enough that it hits weird. So it's like getting hit with cold water while you're having a good time, right? Like it's just, are you sure? And if she built it better, I don't know. It's just a weird, she does weird things, makes weird choices.
Well, I would believe that someone from the main city, like her home city, would dismiss her like that. But I actually don't think the Scaldy would ever assume that she's
a woman is harmless,
useless.
But I mean, they very clearly have ideas about the competence of the D'Angeline people and their ability to like survive in, the harsh Scaldy environment. So I think it actually is understandable that they would dismiss her and any other D'Angeline prisoner like that
as a threat. If in like a fair fight, sure, but I mean exactly what she does is just like a little. It was
just weird that she took the dagger from him. He didn't notice. She announced her intentions. He didn't notice, and then she got him, and he was like, "What? What has happened? It's not like I was warned that this would be done." And I don't know. It was just a weird. Why do it at all then?
Her and Jocelyn fleeing across the countryside, though, was very good. This is tense.
And the horses, I liked what she did with the horses, where the little horse was the one most suited to survive, where that was like, yes, someone has been consulted, someone who knows horses has been spoken to. I enjoyed that. And the mountains and the snow, like that whole part was really good. It was just, every time I was really close to loving it, something slipped past that just jerked me out again. Sorry, Sarah.
You're allowed to dislike books that I like.
I know.
You don't have to apologize.
I feel like you're the quietest one, but you probably have the nicest things to say. So we should open the floor.
I like that the Shaggy Pony had a happy ending.
A Shaggy Pony does have a happy ending.
He got rehomed to a nice family.
Little kids, there, go feed him apples. He gets the happy ending. Mm-hmm. What were your questions?
Mostly, does she end up with anyone? Yeah.
I mean, she ends up with Jocelyn.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Although they have another 2 books of struggle to go through.
Yeah, it's very clear by the end of the book that they're together, but she says that he can't marry, doesn't she? The Queen asks.
I don't know if she says it or if I think he is still feeling like he needs to abide by his castling vows, even if he's been cast out of the order.
He left the order.
He
I mean, it's kind of a mutual parting of ways.
Sure.
You can't fire me. I quit.
I mean, that is kind of what he does.
Yeah.
I liked the two of them a lot. And I think a modern telling of this story would focus on them more and I would enjoy it. It would be more tailored to my specific interests.
You can say you would enjoy it more. That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, you know the Dark Horse character that I didn't realize I would end up loving? Doesn't get a lot of screen time, but Isandra?
Mhm.
The queen. When we start seeing her, I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah, I think she really starts coming into her own as a character when we get further on into the book.
Well, when we actually see her.
Yeah, well, yes.
It's again that theme that the most important characters driving the plot are all women. And I really appreciate that. For all that I complain about the specific execution of it, I can see what she's done well. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen more of the characters that we're meant to care about.
I think in some ways this book is very much, we have a lot of upfront setup so that you don't have to build that in through the rest of the series, which doesn't always work. Yeah.
My priorities when reading and any kind of storytelling intake is just interpersonal stuff. So it's not written to my interests.
It's also like, this is a 900-page book that's just set up. That's too much.
No, I'm not saying that all of it is set up.
I'm saying a lot of it is set up. And which is, again, that weird, what are we shown and what are we told?
Yeah.
We're shown the first 400 pages when you could have just told me that.
Yeah, the setup of her learning to be a prostitute could have been done in a couple of pages. The setup of, honestly, I feel like we could have started somewhere around the time when that prince was betrayed and just jumped in, kind of balls to the wall of, my life is weird and it's about to get weirder.
I was thinking, what if the book just opened on her and Jocelyn waking up in the cart?
Oh.
That would certainly be immediate immersion.
Yeah, in media res. Yeah, Baudouin was the character that kind of encapsulated how I was going to struggle with connecting to characters, because what happens to him is really important and we need to care about how he was betrayed, but the only scene we get of him is when Melisandre buys Phaedra for him. So there's this weird sex scene where he's being told how to hurt her.
We get him a little bit at the longest night celebration where he's the Sun Prince.
He does give a big smooch to a 12-year-old. 9-year-old? Yeah, she's 9.
I thought that was Isadore.
I'm pretty sure that was Baudouin.
But Baudouin was the
Baudouin.
Sun Prince. Yeah. He
Yeah,
kisses her for luck.
That therein is the problem, that I can't remember who did what in that scene, because by that point I didn't know who anyone was.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we get 2 scenes from him and we're meant to really care what happens to him. That's a big moment. That's an important thing, but I remember who he was.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't think we're meant to care that much about, yes, it's very important what happens to him, but I don't think that we're meant to care about, because she doesn't really. I mean, she has some weird, residual guilt about how she was his farewell gift. But at that point, she's still very much self-centered, not really understanding what's going on. Very much within her own, I'm young and pretty and just want to have sex with people.
Which, to be fair,
Can relate. But it's a turning point, though, is my point. Maybe we're not meant to care about him specifically, but
It is a turning point in the action, yes.
But I didn't remember who he was.
Well, it's kind of fun that this male heir is just a plot device for Melisande.
Yeah,
and it's
that's
how it's
true.
revealed that she's got some shit going on. And so that's neat.
She flips the gender roles where men are discarded at about the same rate that women are generally discarded in other science fiction and fantasy of this style.
I also think that she's subverting some of the genre tropes, not necessarily in terms of gender, but in terms of you have this male character who's plotting, a coup, and then he's just dead. And you don't, at least I as a reader, don't expect, like, with that kind of setup, I think, he's going to be important later on, not he's going to immediately die.
Yeah, I think some of the things that bothered me were features rather than bugs, but generally the rate at which I needed to remember names made it really hard to appreciate the skill at which she addressed her own genre.
Yeah, and again, I had an easier time remembering characters because I'm familiar with all of them.
Yeah, she did.
Yes, I did.
But Lily, by that assertion, it means we have to read it again.
But see, the difference is that I enjoyed it the first time and you guys didn't.
I'm curious to know for you but I guess you enjoyed Wheel of Time, so this style isn't a deal breaker for you.
I actually really enjoy this kind of style of writing.
Right. Making us look like assholes.
No, just that we have different tastes in books.
Yeah, Krystle, we don't need help. We do that all by ourselves.
It's true. Grade A.
No, I love you both, even if we disagree.
In spite of. I appreciate that about you, Sarah. You give us too much credit.
But yeah, so I actually really enjoy this style of writing, sometimes more than I enjoy modern prose, to be perfectly honest. Like when Brandon Sanderson took over Wheel of Time, I really didn't enjoy his style of writing for that series. And I much preferred Robert Jordan's. And I also do really like this kind of long, political, very character heavy kind of thing. And by character heavy, I mean there are a lot of characters.
Multitudes.
Yeah, name heavy.
Yeah.
Breadth,
Name
not
heavy.
depth.
Yeah.
That's, I think, the perfect summation of my feelings. It's breadth, not depth.
And I do think that as the books go on, you get more depth to them.
Because she's killed so many people that
She just got to thin the herd in the first book.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the genre too, right? So
I think actually the surprising thing for me that I like it is I normally don't like books that kill off so many characters.
she's only killing the white guys, so feels like it's leveling the playing field.
This is true.
She was making up for lost time.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about this excellent Words Are Weird that I see on our... Unless there's any more spoilers we wanted to talk about.
I don't have any spoiler things. But it is an excellent Words Are Weird.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to try to say that word out loud. So this is my Words Are Weird. Okay, I guess I need to rant for just a second about Hyacinth and his mother and how his entire culture was done dirty, because honestly, I feel like his culture was the most interesting in the book, and all we got was him and his mother, who did nothing except randomly say things at Phaedra to layer in some dread, I guess.
While cooking.
Which, I mean, I guess is realistic of the mother of a home. And I kind of hope that we see more of his culture in the series, but judging by what happens to him not long after you are Lily, I doubt it. I don't know. Hyacinth was done dirty. I think I'd like, instead of a retelling from Jocelyn's point of view, I'd like a retelling from Hyacinth's point of view. So anyway, all of that to say is he's got a word that means forbidden or sinful or something, and it's spelled VRAJNA. And
vagina.
Yeah, I'm a little bit ADHD or something, because I 100% of the time read it as vagina and then had to go back and sound it out and figure it out and go, oh, vrajna. Okay, sure. And so it was just such a weird thing to hit every time he was in a scene. But then also, considering the book, Vrajna seemed really on point. So I don't know if it was an intentional anagram of the word vagina or not, but that's my words are weird.
I mentioned this, but I definitely skimmed over all of the made up fantasy words entirely. Except I can't do that when I have to say them out loud on a podcast. Bad decision.
I can't remember if I skimmed or not, but man, that word really hit me every single time it occurs on the page. The use of phalluses is weird as well, but that's probably just me being modern and having read some excellent smutty fan fiction in my life where we've moved beyond such words as phallus in a sex scene.
It's very 2001 published smut.
I was trying to look up the name of not the Singani, but the country that I thought was sort of the Middle Eastern insert. But I can't even tell you the name of it because every time they brought it up, it was like 3 words long. And I just went, oh, that place. Okay.
Something Al-Akar or something.
It was too much.
I don't see it on the map that we have on here.
The representation of cultures bugged me a lot.
Definitely not one of the strong points of the book.
No. The side locks on the Yeshuites.
Yeah.
It was very jarring. Oh, I found it. Chabel im Akkad.
When you say it like that, it seems fine. But seeing it spelled out, I was just like, no.
Yeah, there's a lot of redundant consonants. The Caliph of the Chabel im Akkad had given L'Envers landed horses. I was willing to bet these writers were Akkadian. Yeah, so yeah. And see, why mention it at all? Because it paid there was no payoff on that culture.
Sarah's making
not there's no payoff in this book.
Oh, I guess that does make a difference.
But is it even introduced in a meaningful enough way for if it does show up in the next book that I theoretically read? I go, oh yeah, I remember these guys. Because like, no.
I think there's so many consonants there that how could you miss them when they're mentioned again?
But bringing them up doesn't mean, like, they aren't introduced in a way that I'm going to have associations. They're just some other political faction.
I think it's nice, at least from my personal perspective, I appreciate knowing that the world is there, even if I don't remember the specifics, because then when we do go in there, I can say, oh, yes, I guess they have talked about this place before. It's not coming completely out of left field, and it makes sense because like there are these international ties.
I guess.
Yeah, it definitely plays to its own strength. It's just whether or not we connect to those strengths that fails.
I think that is a perfect example of
Yeah.
I don't do the big politics.
Yeah.
See, if we had a character other than Hyacinth, because it's not even clear that they're not even the same cultures.
No, they're not. They're not the same culture.
And so,
But Singano are the
travelers.
yeah.
So I just feel like I like big world building when it's represented by.
But we have like we
Characters.
have Barkiel L'Envers, who spends all of his time, or most of his time, in.
Oh, yes. And he was shocked by Frederick, even though he had been pleased by the harems of the Acadians.
No,
remember that detail?
He's not the one that
He's not?
He's not the one that she sleeps with.
That was like Roger Claviel or something.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, those are two different people. He's Claviel's boss.
Claviel was like the ambassador or something.
Yeah. But Barkiel Lanvert was Delaunay's like enemy, because it was his sister that killed Roland's first wife or something.
Yeah.
And then his
Delaunay
sister
was worried that the sister would then kill Roland. Apparently.
Yeah, I don't remember these. I remember them so vaguely. But I read this book this week.
You just got to read it again.
Okie dokie.
I kid.
I would rather read the book about that. Like Roland, who's in love with someone else, but has to marry for the throne or for politics. And then his first wife dies. And then his second wife gets accused of I want to read about that happening, not someone telling me about it 20 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the death of Guy is a good example of that, where we don't see it. And I would rather have not seen it at all and spend that time with Phaedra being shocked by it than for her to retell it to us second or third hand. There's just a weird construction of the moments that she chose to share with us.
If only it weren't restricted by the first person point of view.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a reason I write third person multi-POVs. And I mean, although Angela writes first person point of view and she covers stuff like that really well, so
it's not impossible to do first person right.
Yeah.
I think it's just way harder and often misses the mark, at least for me.
I think if you're going to do first person, you just have to let people not know things.
Mm-hmm.
And just accept that I don't know what happened, but I am shocked by it, and we're moving on.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any other points? We've been talking about this book for 2 hours. I think we covered it.
I think we should let Sarah end on what she likes.
What's your favorite moment in this book?
Yeah.
I've talked about what I liked about it. Favorite moment? I really like all of the stuff that happens in Alba. That's right.
You like the Scottish characters?
Yeah, unsurprisingly.
We're so shocked.
Some of them are Irish.
That's true.
And I think that the twist of what happens to Hyacinth was shocking, in a way that I wasn't expecting it.
Lily doesn't know.
No, I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was good storytelling.
Yeah.
I really liked Hyacinth and Jocelyn keeping warm and dealing with grief the only way they know how. And that felt like, yes, I'm reading a fantasy novel with smooching. It's like, yeah, those were good moments. I like those.
That is a good trope
service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What did you like, Lily?
I mean, anything that didn't take place in court, which unfortunately is the first half of the book.
Yeah, once they're outside of the city, it moves really.
But that is 100%. I just don't find court interesting.
But I mean, I like court intrigue too, but it was just delivered in such a way that made it really hard for me to remember which players were good and bad and what their names were. Like I like all the individual pieces of this book, but the execution of it was really hard for me to focus on. Especially since it starts off so jarring with an entire chapter of how beautiful she was when she was a baby. And it just sets me on such a weird foot that I like it in theory.
I agree though. The beginning of the book is so off-putting on purpose or otherwise that it makes it so hard to get into it, even when it does start talking about things I care more about.
I'm curious to know, like, how you felt about all of the first bit of the book, Sarah. Like, is this just me and Lily being really insecure about beauty? Like,
I mean, yes, she talks a lot about beauty. I mean, I can see why the repetition would be frustrating. I don't find it particularly bothersome or jarring, but that's a personal thing, not a. I mean, I can understand why you would.
Yeah, I think it hits, at least for me, it hits me directly in some weird insecurities that made it really hard to get on board with the assertions that were being made.
Yeah, and it is a very old-fashioned take.
Yeah,
like it's certainly,
although it's also a modern take. Like, just beauty is just still generally very limiting.
Well, okay, it's I think it should be an old-fashioned take.
Yeah. It's time to push the update on that one.
Yeah. But I first read it when I was like 12, so I think I glossed over a lot of that, and that in some respects I think that makes it easier to read at, in my 30s, because I've had time to adjust to what I know I'm going into.
Right.
Yeah, for me, it was a lot of her childhood. Using her childhood to explain her situation was just like, I didn't need that. There was too much child smooching.
Yeah. The first spanking was weird. It was a weird balance, a weird budget of how words were used. I have a complicated relationship with this book, in that I can acknowledge what it's done successfully and how it's changed the genre since. But yeah, it's not working for me. And I'd love to know, I'm reading a book called Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent, and it opens with a similar premise where, something happens, she's sold into sex slavery. And I wonder if she's read this book and has kind of retold it for a modern audience. And now that I've read Kushiel's Dart and I looked up who among my peers have also read it, it's really interesting to see how influenced our friends are by this book. And I just totally missed it at the time, but somehow I've ended up at the same place. So I can definitely acknowledge how it moves the genre. And I appreciate it for that.
Yeah, and I mean, pivotal works have value just in that of itself, yes. Right?
Yes, just existing makes it special.
Yeah,
I agree.
And not every book was written for me. As much as I would like every single book to be written for me, although I'll never have time to read them all, so that would be a waste.
Yeah. That's a good point of view. There needs to be more books for Sarah anyway, because she reads twice as fast as either of us.
That's true. Maybe that's why the books for Sarah are 900 pages long.
I told you I wouldn't have suggested it for the podcast if I had remembered it was that long. Because on my shelf, it's the same size as like a 600-page book, which is
because they're so thin.
Which is longer than what we normally read, but not so long that I would hesitate to put it on the list.
Okay, there's nothing inherently wrong with a 900-page book. I just think books need to earn that. And I don't think this book did.
I don't mind the length, but I agree that it probably could have been cut at some points.
Yeah, she's comparable to what other chunky writers are doing at the time, where it's just a lot of world building. So like, she's successful in what she was doing. But this is the era that I stopped reading fantasy and started reading thrillers, because they were fast and character driven.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us. We are on Twitter and Instagram at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and follow us wherever your podcasts live.
Thanks again for listening, and may your villains always be defeated. Bye.
Bye.